time thing is you have to win.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Mark, settle down a little bit.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast, or welcome to the new Just Win podcast with my new co-host, Marshall Newhouse, 11-year NFL vet, Super Bowl champion. And me and Marshall, we've talked online, about football. He's corrected me when I'm wrong about some things, and we talk things out. But I always really appreciate whenever we have conversations because I always learn something new. I love listening to him on different podcasts throughout the years. So I'm super excited to have Marshall partner up with me on the Just Win podcast for this season and just get his insight as a former NFL player and just as a guy that knows X's and O's and a guy that could talk analytics too. Not all offensive linemen love analytics, but I notice when you're on these podcasts, you talk analytics. So why don't you just introduce yourself to the people and excited to get started.
Man, thank you for having me. Yeah, I played 11 years, most notably for Raiders fans, 2017 in the black and silver when we were still in California. But it's been fun in retirement, staying close to the game. And so when Ted asked me to come on, I jumped at it. I pay attention to the Raiders still. I root for the Raiders still. And it'll be fun to kind of dive in. Games like tonight show you maybe how far the Raiders have come and have yet to go, but it's fun to dive into it. I think there's a lot to like with this new regime, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, and it's on paper, it seemed like the Chargers dominated the Raiders, but in the end, it was an 11-point game. They had a shot, even though it was a bit of a long shot in the fourth quarter, but it just seems like this is what Pete Carroll does. He just figures out a way to keep teams in games. And then I think when the team is a little bit more complete and not just in their first year, they figure out ways to win. But Pete Carroll definitely raises the floor. And I know that's not what Raider fans want to hear is a big Monday night game against a division rival. They want to come out with a win. But unfortunately, that didn't happen today. So let's get into some of the Raiders issues. And mainly, let's talk about the offensive line. They weren't great today. Run game basically got nothing going. There were some protection issues. There were times where they protected Geno well and other times where they had some big breakdowns. What did you see from the offensive line?
Yeah, it was tough from the beginning. Your first play is a play action kind of hole shot. Safety makes a really, really great play, jumps on it, and right out of the gate, you throw a pick. And so you feel, even though your defense holds them to a field goal, you kind of feel this little strain. You're like, all right, how's this night going to go? And then, as the game's going on, you're like, all right, are we going to get Genty some touches? Well, with those touches, you're hoping for a little movement to get him going. And the thing that I noticed, from our limited side view from the broadcast is the line of scrimmage didn't seem to budge a whole lot. You've got Alex Cap in there, started for JPG. He's a taller guard, a very capable guard, gotten paid a lot in this league and can do the job. But between him and Parham, you just felt like the line of scrimmage wasn't moving enough to get Ash Genty moving. And even then, he made some plays. Last week he had 5 broken tackles. He had a few more tonight. You can see the potential. You can see if he gets going, he can really make teams pay. But they just really couldn't get into a rhythm. And then you get to the point where we can talk about this more. The Raiders just felt like they couldn't take the top off of this defense. So even in play action, they're in 12 personnel, 11 personnel, trying to throw play action shots. Nothing's downfield, so you get a lot of checkdowns into the flats. Geno was not accurate on those or a lot of other passes, but we can talk about that as well. But just there wasn't a whole lot there. And so, you hope that then you lean back on the run game. You open things up. You make Jesse Mitchell's really do something different. All he was doing was playing umbrella coverage, in different versions. It was 3, it was 4, it was 0 at times, but it was all top down. And the Raiders did not threaten them all night. And that starts with not opening things up with the run game as much as you'd like. And then not just having another threat outside of a hobbled Brock Bowers. So we can talk more about that.
Yeah, about the run game, it just seems like Genty hasn't he only had maybe 2 or 3 clean runs all season so far. Like every run is just kind of messy and convoluted in the back where he has to break an arm tackle or something like that. So it's been an issue. I think missing JPJ was definitely impactful. Like he did not play well as a pass protector in that first game, but he was moving guys in the run game, and they definitely missed him. Kappa just does not look like the Kappa they were expecting when they paid him $5 million. I think they were hoping that after getting some time to heal and with his injury issues, he could get back to playing at the level he did before. But it just doesn't seem like that's going to be happening this season at the very least. And about the play action shots, like the first play they ran was the exact same first play that they ran in week 1, where they were trying to hit a play action seam shot. But guys watch film, so Gilman watched film. He knew that was coming, and he almost picked it off. Like when you draw that kind of play up, you don't really expect the free safety to be there, but he watched film and he knew it was going to be there. So he was there, and just with the play action shots, like they don't really have that number 1 guy that could take the top off of an offense, and they hope that Thornton can be that guy, but right now he's just a big, fast athlete, and it's hard to win that way in the NFL against NFL athletes. Maybe one day he can get there, but coming from that Tennessee offense where he just didn't run a huge route tree and getting put in the NFL where he has to play this role, he just hasn't been able to be that guy for the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, he's just kind of a one-trick pony. I mean, yeah, he's fast. He's a big receiver. But when teams only see you running 9s and maybe the occasional comeback, there's not a whole lot of threat, to other things you can do. He had a little shallow there earlier in the game. But most of his route tree is pretty simplified. And then ultimately, if you're not getting protection, there's not enough time to even load up to throw one of those deep balls. And you've got to build that trust between the quarterback and a big play receiver, a potential big play receiver like that. But yeah, with the offensive line, listen, I also understand it takes time to gel, and having an injury, especially midweek, that just kind of came out of nowhere. It looks like a concussion where he just, that happens in practice. If, I remember, multiple teams, our Wednesday and Thursday practices, we got after, especially this early season, guys are still banging, and stuff like that can happen. And so getting JPJ kind of out of the mix and having to roll a guard in, he's a veteran, he understands this, but that also means that he hasn't gelled as much with the center and with Glaze at right tackle. So that's a tough ask, especially against this Chargers front, who Ted and I, we were texting. I mean, they're stout. I mean, that is the type of defense they want. They want big bodies. They want guys who are hard to move. And then ultimately that allows, a run game to kind of be suffocated, and it makes you one-dimensional. We saw that all night where it felt like the Raiders were pulling their hair out. They couldn't get deep shots. They couldn't get anybody open. And when you thought one might come open, Geno's pocket was manipulated a little bit. So his eyes went down. He scrambled. He was spinning out, trying to make a play. And that's just not how you win football games. That's not how you produce on offense. And you got to give the Chargers a lot of credit for that. But the offensive line didn't handle that stuff as well. But I give them a little grace to kind of figure things out, because they are there's some young guys, new guys. It takes time to gel. It also takes time for a guy like Chip Kelly to call games based on the personnel he has in the offensive line, the starters that are out there. But ultimately, there's got to be more pop at the line of scrimmage for Ashton Genty, and there's got to be better stunt pickup. I mean, that early pick by Derwin James, I said it was diabolical. There's a lot of veteran tackles who get picked by that. That's a tough one, because you're overloaded on the right. You've got 3 big bodies, and then you've got Derwin James, who can do so many different things, who you're not thinking about, and you isolate the right tackle and a rookie running back in pass protection. So just a diabolical pick stunt. So that's tough. But there were other games that weren't picked up cleanly. And again, as soon as Geno felt that, his feet, you could see his feet chatter a little bit. His eyes went down to watch what was around him instead of picking up anybody that might be coming free in the zone and stuff like that. So those things can get better over time. But the Chargers just did an excellent job of disrupting everything that the Raiders are trying to do.
Yeah, and Geno Smith played statistically one of the worst games he's played in a long time.
Yeah.
But I mean, when when you can't run the ball, you can't get guys open deep. You're really limiting yourselves as far as just trying to attack underneath, trying to hit these little short routes. And that was basically all they really had on their menu, just because of their inability to protect and inability to win on outside. And that's what Geno had to work with. And you could tell he got a little impatient at times, trying to just chuck the ball deep when he thought he had a one-on-one. And he missed on a couple too. Like he missed on that one to Brock Bowers where he had a double move. And also it also, when you're missing Brock Bowers, who is technically your number one receiver, and he played the game, but you know he was out there pretty much as a decoy. Like he wasn't healthy. And when you're as limited with your weapons as the Raiders are, you know, it just really tightens things up. So just as far as what the Raiders could do today, personnel wise and schematically, was just very, very limited against a very good Chargers defense. And when you get into those third and long situations, Jesse Minter is as good as anyone in the league as far as drawing up pressures and manipulating your pass protection schemes.
Yeah, I mean, you just listen. The NFL is so tightly contested everywhere that you're going to be in games. This game ended up being an 11-point game. Max Crosby makes it just an insane play, gets you the ball back again. I mean, if your offense is even competent, you at least get points on the board and you make it a one-score game. So, like, this was not out of reach despite how poorly a lot of the Raiders played and how poorly they put themselves in position. But at the end of the day, you need a dude. You need dudes. And Brock Bowers is their dude right now. But you saw one of those later routes. I think he ran like an over with the brace on. He's just, you know, it was not there. And I applaud him for playing. We don't know what his injury is specifically. I played on torn MCLs on late rest. I call it the clacker. They put a clacking brace on you, and you're just out there. They say you can't injure it worse. So I imagine that's probably why he's out there playing, and he's enough of a threat that maybe he pulls some linebackers with him. When he did get double covered quite a bit, so there were opportunities that other guys were able to steadily get open, but that's just not the case with this receiving core of yet. Jacoby Myers had a lot of catches, a lot of targets. He's kind of your most trustworthy guy. But again, big play threats, something that really makes this defense kind of, you know, their eyes follow that guy. Outside of Bowers, non-injured Bowers, they just don't have it at the moment. And so you've got to manufacture it. You've got to manufacture it with the running game, more creative running game. I was talking during the game about, you know, mixing up runs out of the pistol, and they did under center. It felt like some of those pistol runs, you know, even if Geno is not really an every down threat to keep a read or anything like that, it felt like Genty getting a chance to see his read from a little bit further back and get the handoff led to a little bit more momentum downhill and setting his blocks a little better. But ultimately, if the holes aren't there and there's not enough of a threat, they're going to load the box on you. They're going to stunt. They're going to gash and just muck it up inside, and you're just limited. People were too good for you to be limited with your weapons, especially once there's blood in the water in the middle of the game. The Chargers at no point. I made this at the end because, you know, there was an out route in the 2-minute drill to Thornton on the outside, and, you know, Dante Jackson was all over it. And Dante Jackson's a good corner, but all the corners all night were sitting flat-footed. They were not worried about getting beat over the top. And so they're playing tight. They're playing good coverage. They're already a good defense, but on top of that, you didn't give them a reason to fear anything else. So a lot of things to correct, but some things that I don't know if are immediately correctable, A, without a healthy Brock Bowers, and B, without a consistent downfield threat.
Yeah, and you're pretty much just like finding ways to nickel and dime your way downfield, unfortunately, and that's kind of the way the Raiders have to play until Bowers can be a big play threat again. One thing I do want to see them do more is involve Ashton Genty in the passing game more, and not just as a check down, but as a guy that can run routes, because they're practicing that stuff all summer and all training camp. And, you know, when the bullets fly, they kind of throw that part of the playbook away. And I've seen teams do this in the past where, like, it's a great idea to involve your running back in the pass game, but then, like, when bullets are flying, they just kind of want to go back into the regular things that they do. So I hope they unveil that part of their playbook. because as you mentioned, like we saw flashes of how good Genti could be when he's in space, but right now their run blocking just isn't good enough to get him in space. So you got to find different ways to do it. And Genti is one of your weapons. And if Bowers is hurt, he has to be one of those guys that could help you move the ball and hopefully create a big play with some yak.
And on that note, too, just before we move on, it was telling both, I think, just for his youth, that he wasn't in there on the 2-minute drive before half.
Mm-hmm.
It was loud, and so I wonder if they're kind of easing him into this role as a pass catcher out of the backfield, or if there's issues maybe in protection when they're moving fast. Because that's a quick way for running back to get taken off the field is if you can't protect. I'm not saying that is Ashton Genti, but maybe they're bringing him along a little slower involving him in the pass game. But you're right, him as a threat, not just as a check down, not just after a play action, splitting out wide or running option routes and Texas routes and all those the tree out of the backfield is something they've got to definitely look into if they're not going to have a healthy Brock Bowers or 100% Brock Bowers, and then ultimately if one of these other guys isn't going to step up and be a consistent guy.
Yeah, and one of the issues is when you can't pass protect and teams are blitzing you, you kind of have to keep that back in to protect. But at the same time, like you can go to empty and have kind of a hot throw type of philosophy as well. So I hope they do some of that. I think that will help them move the ball a little bit. But let's talk about this defense. The pass rush just wasn't there. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that the Chargers all of a sudden have become a very good pass blocking team, even without Rashawn Slater. And some of the guys that used to really struggle are playing pretty well. And they just pretty much double teamed Max Crosby and nobody was able to get pressure. They did the same thing to the Chiefs. And that created a lot of issues because Justin Herbert just looked so comfortable back there going through his progressions. And then when he exhausts his progressions, he's scrambling and he's dangerous as a scrambler.
Yeah, these first 2 weeks, he's been scrambling quite a bit. I think it's this balance that he realizes, hey, kind of how we saw Josh Allen, the light bulb go off, and he's like, I'm just bigger, stronger, faster than everybody. And there's no reason why I shouldn't use this to my advantage as long as I'm keeping myself healthy. So you saw him just take off and run. But I mentioned this earlier in the game. The Raiders would bring 5 guys in the pass rush. They'd run a little game, a little stunt. There would be leaks of pressure. But again, knowing what this guy can do running out of the backfield, you have to be in disciplined rush lanes. And they, multiple times early on in this game did not. And it led to chunk yards that convert first downs that lead to drives being extended. And early in the game, when you're trying to get guys kind of in a rhythm, a guy like Max Crosby, who attracts so much attention, the other guys, you kind of have a feel for it. I talk to veteran pass rushers that I play with all the time, and you have a feel for based on what the call is and what strength of the field is and all that stuff, and you understand protection. Most likely these 2 guys are going to be home, or they're going to be the ones, flushing a quarterback this way, up the middle, whatever. And so you've got guys that aren't spying, but they have their antennas up to, especially a mobile quarterback, not letting him get out of the pocket. And so multiple times you saw in the first quarter, second quarter, where they had 5 guys and the top of the pocket was collapsing. And up the middle, there was a seam, and he takes off and he extends the drive. And those things just kill you because you only get so many chances. I think Harbaugh is a guy who is such a believer in Justin Herbert. He's not going to give you so many just drop back chances to get after his quarterback. You saw how often they had 7 big bodies in there to protect him in play action. So they're not trying to expose him as often, I think, as it has been in the past. And so the moments when you do get a chance to get him on the ground and get them behind the chains, you've got to take advantage, and you do that with disciplined rush lanes, and they just didn't have that early on. And it didn't even feel like they adjusted until it was too late. I mean, there was 3 plays I can think of in my head that, say someone's in the pass lane, it's a sack, or he's throwing a bad ball somewhere. And so those kind of things. And again, the game was not out of hand. I don't think at any point in this game. So you take those moments, you're like, all right, you correct, you tweak those things, you make guys more aware, and this thing could go differently.
Yeah, and it's pretty smart philosophy by them to just pretty much keep a lot of guys in protection and just run these like deep crossing routes, and they don't need to hold the underneath coverage because they trust Justin Herbert to make these like really difficult throws. Just like the biggest play of the game with that was that Quentin Johnson
Yeah.
deep bomb where they unfortunately it was a bad call by the Raiders to drop 8. They dropped 8. They were playing cover 3,
Yeah.
and they ran a play where they caused Caillou Blue to look underneath, and then they were able to get the ball behind him on a huge play. And in that play, he had Justin Herbert had excellent pass protection as well. He had extra guys in, and he had just three guys rushing him. So it's a pretty smart philosophy. I think the silver lining is the Raiders' run defense was pretty good today. Obviously, in that last drive, they were able to get a key first down and run out the clock, but they were able to hold the Chargers' run game in check. They were able to hold the Patriots' run game in check for the most part. And when they were in position, you could see that Kyle Blue and Eric Stokes, they have some skills. They could cover guys deep, but it's just about communication and just making sure you're in the right position. And you could tell that this Chargers team's in the second year of their offense and defense systems, whereas the Raiders are in the first year of this offensive system, and kind of like they're running Patrick Graham's system, but they're also kind of mixing in Pete Carroll's beliefs and philosophies as well, and they have a bunch of really young players on the defense playing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious how they continue to kind of deploy Jamal Adams, as he's an older player, but it feels like at times they want him to be kind of Cam Chancellor. And other times he kind of looks lost, like he's floating out there. And I'm not sure what his role is, but when he fills in for run support, he still hits hard. He still enjoys it and brings the physicality. And so I think he's a guy who you hope can be an addition, not subtraction, not a liability out there. And then, yeah, you need a more consistent pass rush with Max Crosby, but in the run game that carries over, because you saw when Max could take his chances and move his spots. Those are splash plays that a lot of teams never even get a chance to see, even if they have a Micah Parsons type of pass rusher. Max is so savvy. I mean, to me, I played against J.J. Watt. It was J.J. Watt-ish, but I think even more tuned in to snap count and guys' body lean and previous plays. And he's picking his spots, but he's jumping and causing just havoc in the backfield. So you've got moments like that where you can really make strides and get teams behind the chains, and then you start making plays in the back end. But too often, I mean, they're stout in the run game, but I think the Chargers were I'm sure they would want to run better against the Raiders, but they were okay. The run went for 2-3 yards. Myron Hampton was a physical runner. They broke a couple, but then they're all right. We're just going to drop back and we'll throw play action, and we'll just go around where you're at right now. And you need your defense to be just adaptable to what they're going to do. It's just this never-ending chess game. And can they be a team that after you play your best move on first down with the run defense, then when a team start adjusting, how do you adjust? And are you as quick to get on the sideline, talk about what happened, and come around the next time? And there are a lot of plays where they bothered Justin Herbert, they bothered the offensive line, but consistently is the key.
Yeah, and like I said before, they just look comfortable. Like even when they had a bad play, they just came back and knew what their next answer was going to be. And that's part of just having some time to play together. And could you kind of talk about the different, like, can the Raiders, how much gelling can they do within the season?
On both sides or just defense?
Both sides of the ball.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, that kind of stuff. I remember when they hired Pete Carroll, I was excited because I never played for him, but what you understood playing against them and hearing about their teams is that he raises the level of competitiveness, and so there's a cumulative effect of how guys practice, and so you hope that is still being instilled with the Raiders. But the time comes with when it's good on good. And you only get so many chances like that in camp, and then in the season you're trying to keep guys healthy. So moments where your starting right guard, right tackle get to go good and good against Max, and pick a defensive tackle, and you're really testing your strain. You're really figuring out how we're going to move people together, and that hurts when on Thursday it's JPJ, and then the next day, Friday, it's Alex Kaplan. So that's something that again will take time, but I imagine as their program sets in and they understand how to practice, those kind of things will come together. And I think ultimately defenses are further ahead earlier in the season. People say that all the time, but it is true. I mean, there's less of an install. There's more opportunities for guys to just pin their ears back and either, hey, I'm doing one or two things as a DN on this play, or I'm in Landon Roberts and I'm here to fill the run, and so I get to just fly around early on and make an impact. Then offensive guys, you're really relying on a lot more. I mean, the game before this game, I mean, Tampa and Houston, both of their offensive lines were just, in moments, looked like they hadn't practiced together. And so those are good defensive fronts. But this early in the season, stuff like that can't happen. Just it takes a little bit of time. You're getting more blitz meetings, and especially if you have young guys, they're learning, tendencies and they're learning about sets. I was watching Glaze in his pass sets, and sometimes, there's a situation where you're like, this is, a passing situation, and this is a team that's going to try to stunt us. And he's still setting flat. He's still setting out, and that gets you on a different level than your guard. And so little things like that, playing alongside that person next to you, understand the situation, give yourself opportunity to, even if a guy is, a better athlete, they're usually better athletes than linemen at defensive end and defensive tackle. But they still have to come through me. I still have angles and leverage and knowing what the snap count and the play is on my side, and understanding to use that to your advantage as often as possible.
Yeah, and we also have to remember this is also Chip Kelly's first time in the NFL after a long absence. So he's also figuring things out as an offensive coordinator and getting back into the league and figuring out what NFL coordinators are doing, how they want to defend him. And I think it was a good sign that he did find some answers in the second half. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the Raiders are 1-1. Brock Bowers was not healthy in this game. That was a major issue. The Chargers look like they're going to be one of the better teams in an AFC. And you're going to go play a Washington team that was unlikely to have Jaden Daniels next week. So they got to, kind of just get it back together, figure things out, and try to be 2-1 next week. But it's definitely not the end of the world. I know, Raider fans had high expectations coming into this game after winning week 1, but it's not the end of the world. There's still some good signs. There's still some talent on this team, but there's some holes on this team, and they're going to have to figure out ways to get better pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about Chip Kelly is that, he was at Ohio State last year, and he's adjusting back to just being a, everyday play caller, not having head coaching duties, but he's adjusting to, what schemes are being run now. And so you saw, as you alluded to, running a similar play first out of the gate, back-to-back weeks. And teams aren't going to be surprised by that stuff anymore. And we're a long way from Chip Kelly, no huddle 24/7 offenses. This is not the Eagles. This is not Oregon. And so seeing how he uses tempo, doesn't use tempo anymore. Seeing how I said this, I posted this, that I would love to see more pre-snap motion. That really helps guys. It helps reveal coverages. It gets eyeballs for misdirection, but then ultimately it helps with timing and uncovering guys in the pass game, even in the run game. It gives better angles for the offensive line. So especially when you see Brock Bowers hurt, all right, let someone else go in motion. Let's help Geno's eyes pre-snap. Let's help the O-lineman's angles pre-snap. And then, not saying use every play, but there is a correlation to a higher percentage of pre-snap motion, and a level of percentage completion. I'll probably get that advanced stat up later, but I would like to see him use that more. That's something that he traditionally did not do a lot of, that I think he can incorporate in offense. And then ultimately getting your horse healthy in Bowers and getting the offensive line to gel, and then designing things for them while they're gelling. And that might mean a different level of max protection and taking shots that way, or these pistol formations running out of that. I mean, the Chargers ran Geno's not the same quarterback. The Chargers ran a QB power read, which is like this inverted veer. So there's a lot of things out there that can be done to mitigate small holes and get things rolling for your offense, just buy you more time.
Yeah, and I would like to see them take some more shots with Trey Tucker, who's like a 4-2 guy. I thought he got deep pretty often against the Patriots in week 1, and they didn't take any shots to him. In this game, they're trying to use him underneath and try to get him to create yards after the catch. But I think, you're just not utilizing his skill set when you're not taking those shots. And that's a great point about using motion and those things. I think in college, defenses are a little bit more simple, but in an NFL, like especially against a guy like Jesse Minter, you need to have those coverage indicators and just use formations and use motions to give Geno Smith information. Andy Reid's one of the best at doing that, just using different pre-snap things to give Patrick Mahomes the most information possible. So that's one thing that Chip Kelly can just be a little bit more intentional about moving forward.
Definitely. And then, we'll see as things develop. They were in a lot of 11 personnel tonight, which when Brock Bowers is, that he is, a little bit debilitated. That seemed like an interesting choice to me. 11 personnel being 1 tight end, 1 running back, 3 receivers. But, I would like to see a little bit more 12, or, if there's another, a kind of a chess piece you can use to kind of vary the personnel up a little bit, because it just didn't seem like it was working and they were sticking with it. And so, the Chargers, I think, were okay playing that. I remember playing for the Packers against a Harbaugh defense, and they were happy because they had the horses to stay in nickel against us with an 11. And they played straight up. It was very vanilla, and they just rallied and tackled. They played over coverage 2 and 4, and they would just beat you up, and they would make you go 14, 15, 16 plays. We saw like the Raiders did that and came away with just a field goal. It's demoralizing, especially that late in the game, to have to really just nickel and dime your way down the field, because the defense is they're not budging. And so you've got to find ways to combat that by mixing up the personnel as well. So again, not the end of the world. I think they'll figure some things out. I think they should get Ashton Jeanty more involved, as we said in the past game. Some more creative run things. The O-line has to play better. They've got to have more pop and move the line of scrimmage. That gives him, we called it letting the running back get his feet to the heel of the line of scrimmage. Then he can make his cut. He can set your blocks up a little bit better. Jeanty, as we see, if we get him one-on-one with a DB, a corner, or a safety, we like that matchup over and over and over again. And that's how you start to open up the play action game and you wear teams down. But getting him in those moments where it's just one-on-one versus DB, you can't ask for much more than that in the NFL. So a lot of room to grow for this team, this offense and this defense. I think Pete Carroll's learning about who he has in this locker room, and we'll see how the veterans and all the players step up.
Yep, I absolutely agree. And I have some ideas, but I don't. It's late. We'll get into some fan questions, and we'll talk about some more offensive ideas on our next pod. But let's get into some questions. Chase Everly asks, "What can be done on the offensive line to give Geno any kind of time?" We saw they were in gun and pistol in a lot of these just drop back passing situations. Maybe just a dedicated chip. I understand when you have a tight end to chip or a running back to chip, that usually takes them away initially as a passing threat. But you give Glaze a chip on the right, that solidifies the then 3 technique and the center, and then it gives Geno just a better pocket to step up into. Again, as I alluded to earlier, there are a couple times when he got to the back of his drop and he stepped up and his eyes went down because he felt chaos. He felt noise in the pocket up the middle. And who knows what reads were coming open. It felt like if you have receivers who understand what's going on, they sit down in zone. So if you can step up in the pocket and it's clear, a veteran quarterback like Geno will carve up a zone, but he needs that extra beat. He needs a little bit more clean pocket. You do that by chips early and downs, and then you solidify the inside of the pocket. Yeah, and to me, it's not like a huge schematic thing. It's stuff like communication and picking up those games like we talked about, and just being better with some of your technique, just like you talked about with DJ Glaze. setting at the same level as his other offensive linemen. So those are things that I think you just got to work through. All right, next question by Aeon Death Thrash.
All right.
O-line was O-line was horrible. Was it just me, or were multiple snaps high? I think this is an issue I saw in preseason, where Meredith is not a natural center, so I think he does have to work on his snaps. His snaps are a bit slow too. Like when you watch him, they just kind of float back there. And if I'm a quarterback and I'm trying to read things out, and the snap is coming down a little slow, it does bother you. So this is an issue, and he had one snap where he hit his leg and it rolled back on third down, and that caused a sack. So I do think the snaps are an issue.
Yeah, listen, I played in my career both tackles and I played both guards, but I never played center. I was learning center towards the end. Assistant coach in Green Bay, Joe Hilgenberg, was teaching me. He played the league 20 years. And he was teaching me the intricacies of the center quarterback exchange. And yeah, some quarterbacks like a faster fastball in gun, and some like the floater. So we don't know what Geno prefers, but if it looks like a duck from your eyes, then it's probably too slow. And so yeah, he's got to get to a point where it's more natural, where he's snapping and bringing his hand back up into protection. That's a easier said than done thing. And then yeah, the one that hit his butt, that usually means a center misreads and thinks that his quarterback is under center, and so the snap is short. It really just could have been a bad wrist or just a bad snap altogether. So yeah, those type of things can't happen. That ruins the play from the beginning. You saw Geno pick one up and try to make something happen, or just drop down. It's just like you hope you fall on and move on to the next down. But those things we take for granted when it's a center that you trust and you never have an issue. The Raiders had Rodney Hudson for years, not have to worry about center quarterback exchange. But then when it starts to rear its head, it really throws a wrench in drives that are materializing. So he's got a lot to work on for sure.
Yeah. All right. Next question from Don Juan. It seemed like the Chargers were picking on safety Pal Mal when we ran zone. Do you think that's a communication early season issue across the team, or just growing pains for a young player? I didn't see them picking on him specifically. I mean, there was that big play to Johnston, but I thought that was more on Caillou Blue, because they hit that crosser right in his deep third, and it was cover 3. So I mean, I thought he was really good in week 1. Obviously, he could do a couple things better. Like he had a bad penalty with diving on Justin Herbert after a slide, but I didn't think that he was a particular issue in a secondary. Did you see anything?
It didn't feel like they were picking on him particularly. I mean, there were a lot of Ladd McConkey caught a lot of underneath balls, and yeah, that deep ball to Quentin Johnston. In Green Bay we ran that with Jordy Nelson. We ran it off a different play action, but we called it a throwback, where he, against one high or cover 3, he runs what looks like it's going to be a deep post, and it puts that corner and the safety in a bind, and then he winds it back. It's like a throwback. And Jordy Nelson, it was uncoverable against that coverage. And so it's just a tough ask, because there is that crosser coming underneath. And so it's just a 2-man route most of the time, but it puts them in a bind. And with speed, the speed is what threatens them. And they kind of freak out. And next thing you know, the ball's by them. So I don't think that was him being targeted per se. It was just a good play by them and a bad execution, that, rough call to be in. But it didn't look like he was getting picked on. But teams will find, especially underneath the nickel corners, boundary corners that look like they're really not staying step for step with guys. They go and talk about that on the sideline. So that does happen quite often. Usually when it's a free safety, I don't see that as much, and I didn't see that tonight. But I'm happy to go watch the film. We'll see kind of how he played. And yeah, that late hit was just a tough decision to make in that moment.
Yeah, Raiders great Jordy Nelson.
That's right. That's right. He did.
1 year. It was 1 year. It was one forgettable year, but he was here. All right. Were there any positives in this game?
Yeah, there were positives. The positive is that I think with more carries, Ashley Juti is just going to get better. He had 12 on the night. You'd love to see just more, even despite the low average, because he just makes guys miss. He really can do a lot. There's a reason you picked him where you picked him, and so To me, he's the bright spot, the guy you can kind of count on moving forward. Jacoby Myers still being a reliable target for the quarterback as well. And then, the defensive front kept you in the game. It was 20-9. You're marching down there with 4.5 minutes left. You score either a field goal or, you score and you go for two. It's a one-possession game. Listen, the NFL, that happens all the time. I posted with 4 minutes left, there's a lot of ball game left. I've seen crazy stuff happen, and a guy like Geno can absolutely do that for you. It's tougher to see that happening without, an immediate threat. But listen, that little that switch vertical kind of little nod by Bowers, if he puts it kind of on his near hip, short of the safeties, that's a touchdown. I mean, it was there. The Chargers and Mentor don't give you a lot of opportunities, but it was there. And so positives are you were still in this game despite it just being kind of just a rough all-around performance. And I think you alluded to that. It feels like Pete Carroll has a way of, materializing these games, whether it was in Seattle or here. But, good teams take advantage of those moments, and the teams that ultimately aren't successful let those slip through their fingers. So I say Genty number one, getting him more touches, Jacoby Myers being the veteran, and this defensive front seven.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Next question from Paper Chase Mace. Why doesn't Chip call any wide zones or screen passes to get Genty in space? Why did it take so long to target the seams in the middle of the field? Why does Genty keep coming off the field? Okay. I think they did try to call outside zones. I think they want to be an outside zone team, but I think it's just hard to do with how aggressive the Chargers were. And it just felt like they couldn't get some of those slants. I mean, I have to watch all 22, but with all the movements, it's kind of hard to block zones, especially when you're not really gelling as an offensive line. Did you kind of see the same thing?
Yeah, it felt like earlier they were trying to get some of those zones working. The best outside zone teams just fully commit as a unit, a run unit to, sometimes it's elephants on parade. I'm even the old school Indianapolis Colts with Jeff Saturday. They just hauled ass to the sideline, and then they let Joseph Adai and their running backs, Ezra and James, make them right. So there's that. I don't think the Raiders are going to be that ever. I don't think Colton Miller is able to do that. I don't think that's what he's built to do, but they can run a more downhill outside zone and then let Ashton Genty put one foot in the ground and get upfield and make guys miss. And so it felt like they tried it early and there was this leakage, and that leakage comes from, a lack of gelling between guards and tackles, guards and centers, and in the backside as well. It definitely hurts as well. Brock Bowers just not being fully healthy. He's not a guy who's going to ever be a big blocker, but he's got to be feasible as a blocker if you're going to have him out there and not him just be a glorified receiver. So, the wide zone is something that I think they're going to try to lean into a little bit more, especially I think, like I mentioned, in pistol. It gives a little bit more depth for the running back to see and vision. So even if there is a little penetration, he can make it right. And what was the second question? The screen passes. Yeah, I think definitely they could use more screen game. The Chargers didn't blitz a ton, so it felt like they were just comfortable rushing their 4, 5, and sometimes 6 guys and letting everybody play behind them. But, screens allow you to get a playmaker the ball in space. Even if it's not an all-out blitz, you get linemen in space running and cutting, hopefully, and Genty making guys miss. And I think it's a valid, worthy call to make in the the right situations to get him another touch, to get the ball in his hands. And so, the seams in the middle of the field, listen, the Chargers didn't give them the seams in the middle of the field. They just were not going to allow that to happen. They're, like we alluded to, Geno forced a couple into double coverage. The one later in the red zone where, listen, they had 6 DBs on the field, including Derwin James. They had 2 DNs. And Derwin James is playing what a Mike linebacker would do in Tampa too. So he's playing underneath the seam ball. Normally a linebacker, that's a better matchup for Geno. And I understand why he made that pass. But Derwin James is a different animal. He waits to the last minute, gets his hands in the way, and it's a good play by him. And so the Chargers just did not give them that many opportunities. And then Geno still tried to force it a couple times. And so, listen, if they're not giving you that, then there's other stuff that you take, and that's just how football goes.
Yeah, that play. I mean, because against a cover 2 Tampa 2 zone, that's a Tampa 2 beater they had with Jacoby Myers running down, and typically that is where you want to go. But I mean, Derwin James did as good of a job as you can do as a
Great
pole
play.
runner.
They get paid too. We say that all the time. Yeah.
Like those guys almost never make a play if you throw a good ball. And I thought it was a pretty good ball by Geno, but it was just such a good job by him getting his head around in time and tipping that pass for an interception. But I do agree that I think the Raiders do need to throw more screens. Like they have to get good at running screens. Because it does help the offensive line when the defensive line has to think twice about just pinning their ears back. They did try to run kind of a non-traditional screen where they had Bowers on one side and he got doubled, and then Geno tried to go backside with Michael Mayer being the escort lead block on that, but Mayer couldn't make the block. If he made that block, I think Ashton Genty probably would have walked into the end zone, but unfortunately it just didn't happen. So that is something that they have to work on, but it's just like another thing that you have to dedicate practice time to and get better at.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all the questions. I think we covered a lot of it. There's a lot of love for you, Marshall, in the chat. Everybody thinks you're a natural, and they appreciate they appreciate you dropping gems here.
I'm trying, man. I'm learning this team. I've been covering the NFL in a more broad sense, but I'm excited to kind of focus in on the Raiders and see how they can get better. And being a Raider myself, it's there's a sense of pride. So I'm going to enjoy this a lot. It'll be fun. I'd love for you fans to interact with me on my socials in Newhouse 73, Twitter, Blue Sky, stuff like that. I'm out there. I'm happy to answer questions when I'm on. I watch college football and I watch NFL football. So if you have football questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, so make sure you guys follow Marshall on all the socials. I'll share his stuff. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll definitely find him. But yeah, Marshall, great first show. Thank you so much for coming on and agreeing to do this. I'm excited to just keep talking with you during the season, and we'll preview. We'll after we watch the all 22, we'll talk a little bit about this game and what we see, and then we'll get into our Washington preview midweek. So make sure you guys look out for that. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you guys this week.